The autumn rain painted streaks down the windows of the small gallery in Brooklyn's art district. Isabella Chen stood before her latest painting, adjusting it for the 100th time. Her hands trembled slightly as she stepped back to examine the piece that had taken her 3 months to complete. The canvas showed the New York skyline at dawn, but with her unique twist, the buildings seemed to breathe and pulse with life, as if the city itself had a heartbeat. "Stop fidgeting," Emma Martinez said, walking up behind her best friend with 2 cups of coffee. "Your painting is perfect. Tonight is going to be amazing." Isabella accepted the coffee gratefully, wrapping her fingers around the warm cup. What if nobody comes? What if they hate my work? What if this whole thing is a disaster? Emma rolled her eyes. What if aliens land and declare you the queen of art? Stop with the what-ifs. You've worked too hard for this moment. The gallery opening was Isabella's first solo show. After years of working odd jobs and painting in her tiny apartment, she had saved every penny for 6 months to afford this one night. The rental fee, the wine, the cheese platter from the corner deli, everything had been carefully calculated and budgeted. The unexpected guests as the evening began. People slowly filtered into the small space. Isabella recognized most of them, fellow artists from her neighborhood. Friends from the coffee shop where she worked mornings. Her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who always encouraged her art. They admired her work with genuine appreciation. But Isabella knew that appreciation didn't always translate to sales. She was explaining the inspiration behind her city series to a young couple when the gallery door opened with a soft chime. The man who entered seemed to change the entire atmosphere of the room. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than Isabella's monthly rent. His dark hair was styled impeccably, and he moved with the confident stride of someone accustomed to commanding. Attention, Vincent Blake paused just inside the doorway, his steel-gray eyes scanning the room before settling on the paintings. Isabella felt her breath catch. She recognized him immediately, not personally, but from magazine covers and news articles. Vincent Blake, the 32-year-old founder and CEO of Blake Technologies, a company that had revolutionized cloud computing and made him one of the youngest. Billionaires in the country? What is he doing here? Emma whispered, moving closer to Isabella. I have absolutely no idea, Isabella whispered back, trying not to stare as Vincent began moving slowly through the gallery, studying each painting with intense concentration. The moment everything changed, Vincent stopped in front of Isabella's centerpiece, the painting she had titled Pulse of the City. It was her most personal work, showing Manhattan not as a collection of buildings, but as a living entity with its own rhythm and soul. She had painted it during her darkest period, when she had been laid off from her gallery job and wasn't sure if she could continue pursuing art. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, completely absorbed in the piece. Other gallery visitors began to notice him, whispers rippling through the small crowd. Isabella found herself walking over, drawn by curiosity and nervousness. It's beautiful, Vincent said without turning around. His voice was deeper than she had expected, the warmth that surprised her. Thank you, Isabella replied, trying to keep her voice steady. It took me 3 months to get it right. He turned to look at her then, and Isabella felt the full impact of his attention. His eyes were intelligent and intense. But there was something else there, a loneliness that she recognized because she had felt it. Herself. You're the artist, he said. It wasn't a question. Isabella Chen, she said, extending her hand. Vincent Blake. His handshake was firm and warm. This painting captures something I've never seen before. The city isn't just a backdrop in your work, it's alive. Isabella felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. That's exactly what I was trying to show. Most people see New York as cold and impersonal, but I've always felt like it has its own heartbeat. The $100,000 moment, they talked for another 20 minutes about art, about the city, about the way light changed throughout the day. Isabella found herself relaxing despite the strangeness of the situation. Vincent wasn't what she had expected from his reputation. The business magazines portrayed him as ruthless and calculating, but the man standing before her seemed genuinely interested in her perspective. I'd like to buy it. Vincent said suddenly. Isabella blinked. Which one? Pulse of the City. How much? Isabella's mind went blank. She had hoped to sell it for maybe $2,000, enough to pay her rent for another month and buy more art supplies. 2,000, she managed to say. Vincent pulled out his phone and made a quick call. David, I need you to prepare a check for $100,000. Yes, you heard correctly. I'll explain later. Isabella felt the world tilt around her. I'm sorry, did you say 100,000? The painting is worth far more than $2,000, Vincent said calmly. You're undervaluing your own work. The gallery had gone completely silent. Every person in the room was staring at them. Emma looked like she might faint. Mrs. Patterson had dropped her wine glass. I can't accept that, Isabella said. Though her heart was pounding, $100,000 would change her entire life. She could quit her coffee shop job, rent a proper studio, focus entirely on her art. Why not? Because it's too much. Because I don't understand why you're doing this. Because this doesn't happen to people like me. Vincent smiled then, and it transformed his entire face. Maybe it's time it did. The mystery deepens. His assistant arrived within the hour, with a check and legal documents. Isabella signed them in a daze, still not quite believing what was happening. The other paintings in her show sold quickly after that, apparently. When a billionaire declared your work valuable, other people took notice. As the evening wound down and the last guests filtered out, Isabella found herself alone with Vincent while Emma handled the remaining details with the gallery owner. Why? She asked simply. Vincent was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Have you ever felt like you're living someone else's life? Like you're playing a role that was written for you before you were born? Isabella nodded slowly. Every day until I started painting, your art is honest. In a world full of pretense and calculation, you created something real. That's rarer than you might think. He handed her a business card. I'd like to take you to dinner tomorrow night. If you're interested, Isabella looked down at the card-heavy paper, elegant lettering. Is this part of buying my painting? No, Vincent said. This is separate. This is me asking you out because I'd like to get to know the person who sees the city's heartbeat. After he left, Isabella sat alone in the empty gallery, surrounded by the red dots indicating sold paintings. Holding a check for $100,000, Emma collapsed into a chair beside her. What just happened? Emma asked. I think Isabella said slowly. My life just completely changed. She looked at Vincent's business card again. Tomorrow night, she would have dinner with one of the most powerful men in New York. But tonight, she was still the struggling artist from Brooklyn who had just sold her first painting for an impossible amount of money. As she carefully placed the check in her purse, Isabella wondered if Vincent Blake had any idea that he had just bought more than a painting. He had bought her a future, her freedom, and maybe, just maybe, her heart. The rain had stopped, and through the gallery windows the city lights sparkled like stars. For the first time in years, Isabella felt like anything was possible. Isabella woke up in her cramped studio apartment, sunlight streaming through the single window that faced the brick wall of the building next door. For a moment, she wondered if the previous night had been an elaborate dream. Then she saw Vincent's business card on her nightstand and the check tucked safely in her wallet. And reality came rushing back. $100,000. The number felt impossible, like a foreign language she didn't speak. She had grown up in Queens with her mother Rosa, who had worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat after Isabella's father left when she was 12. Money had always been something that disappeared as quickly as it arrived, for rent, for groceries, for her mother's medical bills. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Coffee in 20 minutes. Need to hear everything about tonight's dinner plans? Isabella groaned and rolled out of bed. She had almost forgotten about the dinner invitation. What did one wear to dinner with a billionaire? Her entire wardrobe could fit in 2 small closets, and most of it came from thrift stores and clearance racks. Coffee and confessions at their usual coffee shop. Emma was practically vibrating with excitement. So where is he taking you? La Bernardine, per se. Somewhere I can't even pronounce. He didn't say, Isabella admitted, stirring her coffee absently. "Emma, what if this is all some kind of mistake? What if he changes his mind about the painting?" "Stop it," Emma said firmly. "You deserve this. Your art is incredible, and if Vincent Blake sees that, then he has good taste." She paused. "Also, he's gorgeous. Did you notice how he couldn't take his eyes off you?" Isabella had noticed, but she didn't trust her own perception. Men like Vincent Blake didn't look at women like her, at least, not in her experience. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. The caller ID showed an unknown number. "Isabella, this is David Morrison, Mr. Blake's assistant. Mr. Blake would like to know if 7 o'clock works for dinner tonight." "Yes, that's fine," Isabella managed. "Excellent. A car will pick you up at 6:30. The driver will have your address." After hanging up, Isabella stared at her phone. "He's sending a car." Emma grinned. "Cinderella, your pumpkin carriage awaits. The dinner that changed everything that evening." Isabella stood before her mirror in her best dress, a simple black number she had bought for job interviews. She had borrowed Emma's pearl earrings and spent an hour watching makeup tutorials online. When the sleek black car arrived, she felt like she was stepping into someone else's life. The restaurant was on the Upper East Side, the kind of place where Isabella had only walked past and wondered what it would be like inside. Vincent was waiting at a private table near the window, and when he stood to greet her, she was struck again by how different he seemed from his public image. "You look beautiful," he said, pulling out her chair. "Thank you. This place is incredible." They talked easily through dinner about art, about New York, about their childhoods. Vincent told her about growing up with parents who saw him as an extension of their social ambitions, about building his first computer at age 10, about the pressure of running a company that employed thousands of people. "What about you?" He asked, "What made you want to be an artist?" Isabella thought about her answer. "My father left when I was 12. My mom was working constantly and I felt invisible most of the time. But when I painted, I existed. I mattered. The colors and shapes on the canvas were proof that I was here." Something shifted in Vincent's expression. "I understand that feeling." As desert arrived, Vincent's demeanor changed. He seemed to be wrestling with something internal. "Isabella, I need to ask you something, and I want you to hear me out completely before you respond." Her heart skipped. "Okay." The impossible proposal. Vincent set down his coffee and looked directly at her. "I need to get married." Isabella nearly choked on her wine. "I'm sorry, what?" "Not a real marriage. A business arrangement. I need a wife for 1 year, and I'd like it to be you." The restaurant seemed to spin around her. "Vincent, I don't understand." He pulled out a folder from his briefcase. "My board of directors is pressuring me to settle down. There's a major acquisition coming up, a family-owned company worth $15 billion. The owner, Harrison Webb, is old-fashioned. He doesn't trust unmarried men with his life's work." Isabella stared at him. "So you want to hire a wife? I want to hire you. You're perfect for what I need. Intelligent, beautiful, authentic. You handled yourself perfectly at the gallery. You can hold your own in any social situation. This is insane." Vincent opened the folder and slid it across the table. "Look at the terms." With shaking hands, Isabella opened the document. The number at the bottom made her gasp. $10 million? Upon successful completion of the 1-year contract, plus living expenses, wardrobe allowance, and anything else you need. You'd live in my penthouse, attend business functions as my wife, play the role convincingly in public. In private, completely separate lives. The weight of impossible choices. Isabella felt like she was drowning. What would this involve exactly? Business dinners, charity events, company functions. We'd need to appear happily married, attend social gatherings, perhaps take a few trips, but our personal lives would remain completely separate. Different bedrooms, different schedules when we're not in public, and after a year, quiet divorce. You take your money and live whatever life you choose. Isabella thought about her mother, who had been diagnosed with early-onset dementia 6 months ago and would need specialized care soon. She thought about her dreams of opening her own gallery, traveling to see the great art museums of the world, of never worrying about rent again. Why me? She asked quietly. Vincent was silent for a long moment. Because when I watched you at the gallery last night, you were completely yourself. You weren't trying to impress anyone or be someone else. In my world, that's incredibly rare. This feels like prostitution with extra steps. It's not. It's a business arrangement between two consenting adults. You'd have complete autonomy, legal protection, and financial independence. Isabella's head was spinning. I need time to think, of course. But Isabella? Vincent's voice was gentle. I need an answer by tomorrow night. The board meets Monday morning. The long night of decision back in her apartment. Isabella paced the small living room while Emma listened in stunned silence to the entire story. $10 million, Emma whispered. Isabella, do you understand what that means? You'd never have to worry about money again. You could take care of your mom, buy a real studio, travel the world. But what about love? What about finding someone real? Emma grabbed her shoulders. Honey, you can't eat love. You can't pay your mom's medical bills with romance. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It feels wrong. Like I'd be selling myself. You'd be acting. It's a very well-paid acting job that night. Isabella called her mother at the care facility in Queens. Mia, her mother said, her voice already showing signs of the confusion that came and went. How was your art show? Good, Mama. Really good. Isabella's voice cracked. I sold a painting. I'm so proud of you. Your father, he never understood, but I always knew you were special. After hanging up, Isabella sat in her tiny kitchen looking at the stack of medical bills on her table. Her mother's condition would only get worse, and the costs would only increase. This contract could solve everything, but it could also destroy her. What if she fell in love with Vincent? What if living a lie for a year changed her in ways she couldn't come back from? Her phone buzzed with a text from Vincent. Whatever you decide, I respect. You're an extraordinary woman, Isabella. She stared at the message for a long time. Tomorrow, she would give him her answer. Tonight, she would make the most important decision of her life. Looking out her window at the city lights, Isabella thought about her painting Pulse of the City. She had painted New York's heartbeat. But now she wondered if she was about to sell her own heart for the chance at a different kind of life. The question that kept her awake all night was simple but impossible to answer. What was the price of dreams? And was she willing to pay it? 3 months after signing the most surreal contract of her life, Isabella stood in the marble bathroom of Vincent's penthouse, barely recognizing herself in the mirror. The woman staring back wore a designer gown that cost more than her old annual salary, her hair styled by Manhattan's most exclusive colorist, makeup applied by an artist who worked with celebrities. She was Mrs. Isabella Blake now, at least on paper and in public. The wedding had been a small, efficient ceremony in Vincent's lawyer's office. No flowers, no music. Just signatures on documents that bound them together for the next 9 months. The arrangement had started awkwardly. Vincent's penthouse was a masterpiece of modern architecture. All glass walls and minimalist furniture. With breathtaking views of Central Park, Isabella's bedroom was on the opposite end from Vincent's, connected by a living space so large it could have housed 3 families from her old neighborhood. The car is here, Vincent called from the main living area. Tonight was the crucial dinner with Harrison Webb, the family patriarch whose company Vincent needed to acquire. Everything they had been working toward for 3 months led to this evening playing the perfect wife. The dinner was held at Webb's private club, an old money establishment where oil paintings of long-dead members watched over leather armchairs and crystal decanters. Harrison Webb was exactly what Isabella had expected, a silver-haired man in his 70s who spoke with the authority of someone who had never been questioned. Vincent lent. You finally found yourself a proper wife, Webb said, taking Isabella's hand with old-fashioned gallantry. My Martha always said a man isn't complete without the right woman beside him. Isabella smiled graciously, playing the role she had perfected over months of practice. Mr. Webb, Vincent speaks of you with such admiration. He's told me how much your business philosophy has influenced his own approach. Webb's eyes lit up. Has he now? Vincent, you chose well. Beauty and brains, just like my Martha. Throughout dinner, Isabella watched Vincent work his magic. He was brilliant at reading people, knowing exactly what they wanted to hear while maintaining his own integrity. But she also noticed things others missed. The way his jaw tightened when Webb made casual comments about keeping wives happy with shopping trips, the flash of irritation when older board members dismissed younger employees' ideas. "Tell me," Isabella Webb's wife Margaret said during dessert, "how do you manage with Vincent's demanding schedule? He must travel constantly." Isabella felt Vincent's eyes on her. This was the test. Could she sell the illusion of a happy marriage convincingly enough to secure a $15 billion deal? "Vincent makes sure I never feel neglected," she said, reaching over to touch his hand. "He may be busy changing the world during the day, but he always comes home to me." The gesture was scripted, practiced, but when Vincent's fingers intertwined with hers, the jolt of electricity was entirely real. Cracks in the performance 2 weeks after the successful Webb dinner, the acquisition had been approved unanimously. Isabella found herself alone in the penthouse more often than not. Vincent had thrown himself into the merger details with obsessive focus, working 18-hour days and barely acknowledging her presence when he was home. She had used the time to set up a small art studio in one of the spare rooms. Despite Vincent's insistence that she could have an entire floor of the building for her work, the familiar smell of paint and turpentine grounded her in this surreal new life. One evening, while working on a new piece, an abstract representation of what it felt like to live in a glass tower, she heard Vincent's key in the door. It was past midnight. "You're up late," he said, appearing in the doorway of her makeshift studio. He had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, looking more human than she had seen him in days. "So are you. How's the merger going?" "Complicated. Webb's son wants to maintain operational control while we provide the capital. It's delicate." He stepped closer to her easel. "What are you working on?" Isabella hesitated. The painting was deeply personal, swirls of gold and silver representing wealth and privilege, but shot through with darker colors that spoke to isolation and pretense. "Just exploring some feelings." Vincent studied the canvas. With the same intensity he had shown her work at the gallery months ago. "It's about being trapped in luxury, isn't it?" His perception caught her off guard. "Something like that. I know the feeling." They stood in comfortable silence, both looking at the painting. Isabella became acutely aware of how close he was standing, of the way his cologne mixed with the smell of paint to create something intoxicating. "Isabella," Vincent said quietly. The question hung in the air between them. How could she answer honestly? She was living in luxury beyond her wildest dreams. Her mother was receiving the best possible care, and she had enough money to never worry about anything again. But she was also living a lie, married to a man who treated her like an elegant accessory, slowly losing herself in a role that felt increasingly suffocating. "Are you?" she asked instead. Vincent's laugh was hollow. "I got what I wanted. The Webb acquisition will make Blake Technologies the largest independent cloud computing company in the world." That's not what I asked." He looked at her then, really looked at her. And Isabella saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Loneliness, regret, and something else. Something that looked dangerously like longing. "No," he said simply. "I'm not happy." The wall begins to crumble the next morning. Isabella woke to find Vincent in the kitchen making coffee, something she had never seen him do. Usually, he was gone before she woke up. His breakfast prepared by the housekeeper. "Good morning," he said, handing her a perfectly made cappuccino. "Thank you. No 18-hour day today? I thought we might spend some time together." As friends, he added quickly, as if remembering the boundaries of their arrangement. They ended up walking through Central Park. Something Isabella had never done, despite living above it for months. Vincent seemed different away from his office in their penthouse stage set, more relaxed. More like the man she had glimpsed at the gallery that first night. "Can I ask you something?" Isabella said as they sat on a bench watching joggers and dog walkers. "Why did you really choose me for this arrangement?" Vincent was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. "Because you were the first person in years who looked at me and saw just a man?" Not a company, not a bank account, not a business opportunity. Just Vincent, is that so rare? In my world. Yes. He turned to face her. Everyone wants something from me. Business deals, investments, donations, social connections. But that night at the gallery, you argued with me about the price of your painting. You tried to refuse my money. You treated me like I was slightly crazy for spending so much, not like I was a god for being able to afford it. Isabella felt something shift inside her chest. Vincent, I know this arrangement has been difficult for you. I see how you look sometimes when we're at those business dinners like you're suffocating. I never wanted to make you feel trapped. Then why did you propose it? Because I was desperate and selfish. And because I thought I could keep it purely business. He paused. I was wrong about that last part, the point of no return that evening. They attended a charity gala together, another performance of The Perfect Couple. But something had changed between them after their conversation in the park. When Vincent put his arm around her waist for photos, Isabella felt her pulse quickened. When she laughed at his jokes during dinner, the laughter was genuine. When they danced to the string quartet's gentle melodies, she found herself wishing the song would never end. We look good together, Vincent murmured as they swayed to the music. We're supposed to, Isabella replied. But her voice was breathless. Isabella. His voice was different, rougher. This isn't acting anymore, is it? She looked up into his eyes and saw her own feelings reflected back at her. The careful walls they had built around their arrangement were crumbling, and they both knew it. No, she whispered. It's not. Before she could second-guess herself, Vincent leaned down and kissed her. Not the careful performance kisses they had shared for cameras, but something real and desperate and completely honest. When they broke apart, Isabella's world had shifted fundamentally. This complicates things, she said. Everything about you has complicated my life since the moment I walked into that gallery, back at the penthouse. They stood in the living room, the city sparkling beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The distance between them felt both enormous and non-existent. What happens now? Isabella asked. I don't know. I've never been in this situation before. What situation? Vincent stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes. Being in love with someone I hired to love me, the words hung between them like a challenge and a confession rolled into one. Vincent, you don't have to say anything. I know how impossible this is. I know I've put you in an unfair position. But I needed you to know. Isabella thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. The gallery opening, the impossible offer, the months of pretending, the gradual realization that somewhere along the way, pretense had become truth. What if I said I love you too? His eyes widened. Do you? Yes, and it terrifies me, because I don't know what's real anymore. Did I fall in love with you, or with the life you gave me? How can I trust my own feelings when everything started with a contract? Vincent reached for her hands. Because love isn't something you can buy or negotiate or put in a contract. It just happens, despite our best efforts to prevent it. So what do? We have 6 months left on our agreement. 6 months to figure out if what we feel is strong enough to survive outside of this arrangement. 6 months to see if we can build something real together. Isabella looked around the penthouse at the luxury that surrounded them, at the life that still felt like a beautiful costume she was wearing. Then she looked at Vincent, at the man who had bought her painting because he saw her soul in it, who had offered her security when she needed it most, who had somehow become the most important person in her world. Okay, she said. Let's see if we can fall in love for real this time, as Vincent kissed her again. Isabella realized that the most expensive thing he had ever bought her wasn't the $10 million in the contract. It was the chance to discover who she really was when she wasn't afraid of losing everything. Outside, New York glittered like a promise, and for the first time since signing that impossible contract, Isabella felt like she was finally home. The end.